You know, we're always told there's some magic number for retirement, right? Maybe it's $1 million, maybe two. But what if I told you that for the wealthiest retirees, it's not really about the number at all? It's about something way more powerful: control. In this explainer, we're going to dig into the hard data from the Federal Reserve and climb the wealth ladder step by step. We'll uncover what really separates a comfortable retirement from a truly wealthy one. And you'll see it's not just about having more money, it's about having more control over your income, your taxes, and, well, your entire financial life. All right, let's get into it.
Okay, so right off the bat, just look at this crazy difference. The latest data shows the median retiree has a net worth of about $461,000. Now, that means if you lined up every single retiree, the person smack in the middle has that much. Half have more, half have less. Simple enough. But then look at the average: $2 million. So why is the average more than 4 times higher? Well, it's because the super wealthy at the very top are pulling that average way, way up. This tells you that the retirement landscape is not a level playing field. The so-called typical retirement experience is a whole lot different than what that big average number might make you think.
So let's actually break this down and climb that ladder together. We're going to start with a group that most people would call very successful, the top 25%. And we're going to work our way all the way up to the top 1%. And as we go, I want you to pay really close attention to the shift. It's not just that the numbers get bigger. There's a fundamental change in strategy, in mindset, and in the kinds of problems people are trying to solve at each level. Okay, first up, the top quarter of all retirees. Now, these are the folks who did everything right. I mean, they checked all the boxes. They saved their money, they maxed out their 401ks, they worked hard to pay off the house. By any measure, they are comfortable. But they run into this really specific and honestly unexpected problem. It's this weird paradox of being wealthy on paper, but feeling kind of squeezed in your day-to-day life. So let's put some numbers to it. For this group, we're talking in net worth somewhere in the ballpark of $740,000 to $1 million. And their annual income is landing between $70,000 and $90,000. You can picture it, right? Maybe a couple were both worked, they got a small pension, they were smart about when they took Social Security. A big old chunk of that net worth, maybe 300 or 400 grand, is just the equity in their house. And the rest, it's probably parked in their retirement accounts. And that's where the problem is, because most of that wealth is basically locked up. And this is the real kicker: 62%. That is a huge number. According to the Federal Reserve, almost 2/3 of a typical retiree's wealth is illiquid. That means it's stuck. It's in the bricks and mortar of their house, or it's in retirement accounts with all sorts of rules and penalties for taking it out. So even though they've got a high net worth, they can feel really constrained when it comes to cash flow. They can't just easily grab a chunk of that wealth if a big medical bill pops up, not without selling their house or getting some complicated loan. This is the classic definition of being house rich but cash poor, and it creates this constant low-grade anxiety about whether the money you can touch will be enough. Okay, let's climb up to the next rung on the ladder. We're in the top 10% now. And at this level, the problem shifts. It's not about liquidity anymore. It's a new, more complicated challenge. See, for their whole careers, their boss handled their paycheck and took out the taxes. Now, in retirement, they're suddenly the CEO of their own finances, and a lot of them walk right into what you could call the tax trap. And yeah, these numbers look great, right? A net worth of $2.2 million or more, an annual income of $120,000 to $150,000. These are your former executives, your successful small business owners. They look totally set. But the trap isn't a lack of money, it's the lack of a smart withdrawal strategy. All of a sudden, they're in charge of creating their own paycheck from a bunch of different places: Social Security, IRA withdrawals, maybe selling some stocks. And honestly, most have no real plan for how to do that in a tax-efficient way. And this quote just nails it. There's a story about a client who had $1.8 million, and they were just pulling $60,000 a year straight from their traditional IRA. Well, that plus their other income shoved them right into a 22% federal tax bracket. At the exact same time, they had $300,000 just sitting in a regular brokerage account that they could have taken money from at a 0% capital gains rate. They were paying thousands in taxes they didn't have to, just because they were pulling from the wrong piggy bank first. It just goes to show you, at this level, keeping your wealth is all about controlling your taxes. Now, when we get to the top 5%, something really big happens. We see this major shift, both psychologically and strategically. These retirees, they're not just thinking about how to draw down one big pile of money. They're past that. Instead, they've spent years actively building what you can only really call an income ecosystem. Of course, the numbers get bigger.
a net worth of $3 million plus, and an income that's pushing past $200,000 a year. But that's not the real story here. The real story is where that money comes from. This income isn't just one big IRA withdrawal. It's flowing from multiple, totally different sources. Rental properties, dividend-paying stocks, maybe they still have a piece of a business. Their financial life isn't just one big pot. It's a whole network of streams feeding into it.
And this is their whole philosophy. Research shows that people in this group have, on average, 7 different income streams. 7. Think about that for a second. You got Social Security, maybe a pension, IRA money, rental income, dividend income, interest income, maybe even some consulting work. Why is that so incredibly powerful? Because no single income stream runs their whole tax situation. They've got the ultimate flexibility. They can dial some streams up one year and dial others down, giving them just massive control over how much taxable income they show. The question for them isn't, will my money last? It's, how do I tweak this system to pay the least in tax and leave the biggest legacy? And finally, we've made it to the top of the ladder, the top 1%. And this is where that idea of financial control reaches its absolute peak. These folks have moved way beyond basic tax planning. They're playing a different game, something we call tax arbitrage. They aren't just reacting to the tax code, they're actively designing their finances to take advantage of it.
At this level, yeah, the net worth is $4 million and up, and the income can easily top $500,000 a year. These are your really successful entrepreneurs, big-time real estate investors, top corporate execs. But look at how their wealth is spread out. Maybe only 20% is in their main house, 30% is in different retirement accounts. But that other 50%, it's all over the place. Taxable investments, rental properties, private businesses, that diversification, that's their superpower.
So what is this tax arbitrage thing really? Well, to put it simply, it's the ability to look at the tax brackets every year and decide, you know what, I think I want to be in this one. They can pull income forward or push it back. They choose which accounts to use and in what order. Essentially, they tell the IRS what their tax bill is going to be, not the other way around. Their required minimum distributions don't control them, their strategy does. This is the absolute ultimate form of financial control. So right about now, you're probably wondering, okay, that's great for them, but how do they actually pull this off? What are they doing? That's exactly what we're going to cover next. We're going to break down 3 specific, concrete strategies that the wealthiest retirees use to build and keep this incredible level of control. These aren't some big secrets. They're just smart, systematic ways of managing your wealth. Here they are, the 3 pillars. First, the 60-40 liquidity rule. This one solves that house-rich, cash-poor problem we saw with the top 25%. Second, the income pyramid, which is the blueprint for that income ecosystem we talked about. And third, the reverse tax strategy, which is the engine that makes tax arbitrage possible. Let's start with liquidity. The wealthiest retirees make sure that at least 40% of their net worth is in liquid assets. That means if your net worth is $2 million, you've got $800,000 that you can get to easily outside of your house and locked up retirement funds. That gives you incredible flexibility. Next up is the income pyramid. This is how they actually structure those 7 income streams. So, layer 1, the foundation, is guaranteed income, Social Security, pensions. This covers the absolute must-haves, the essentials. Layer 2 is strategic withdrawals from their portfolio to fund their desired lifestyle. And layer 3, the very top, is optional income from things like rental properties or dividends. That's the fun money for travel, for their legacy. Now, here's the crucial part. The top 5% have all 3 of these layers completely built before they retire. Most people only really have layer 1 and are just trying to stretch it to cover everything else. And finally, we have the master strategy, the reverse tax strategy. This brings that whole theme of control full circle. See, most people pay taxes as a reaction. The wealthy plan for them proactively. For example, when they're in their 60s, before those required minimum distributions, or RMDs, start, they might strategically do some Roth conversions or pull money from their IRAs just to fill up the lower 10% and 12% tax brackets. They pay a little bit of tax now at a super low rate to shrink their tax-deferred accounts. That way, when their RMDs do start in their 70s, the required withdrawal is smaller and it doesn't bump them into a much higher tax bracket. They're literally playing chess with the tax code, thinking years and years ahead. So as we wrap this up, if there's one single thing to take away from all this, it's this. Real wealth in retirement is not measured by the size of your bank account. It's measured by the amount of control you have over your own financial life. It's about making that shift from being a passive saver to being an active architect of your income and your tax plan. Every single strategy we just talked about, it all points back to that one core goal. And that really just leaves us with this one last thought. And it's not a question just for the top 1%. It's a question for every single person who's planning for their future. When you look at your own finances, are you just building a single pile of money, or are you building a system that gives you options, flexibility, and control? Because at the end of the day, that control, that's what real financial freedom is all about. So what's your strategy for control? Thanks for joining me.